Mike Tretter, class of 1997.
If you could tell us, what years did you play Middletown football?
1993, the season of 93, we were freshmen. I played then. Varsity was 94 to 96.
Okay, and who was your head coach?
Have to note the freshman coach of Coach Pettis for freshman ball, and then I had Etsy for my sophomore and junior year, and then going into the senior year was Don Guy's first year.
Let's talk about the Facebook page, how that came about.
The idea, it stemmed from, when COVID hit in March, sitting around out of a job, daddy daycare all day, man, just looking for an out. And, was thinking of a way to, get up with friends on a more positive note because, everything going on politically and that, it's just a mess on social media. And I just wanted to make some type of way that we could communicate and just take our head outside of, what's going on in regular life. So I just, I was a member of this group in Downingtown. Since I live in Downingtown, that's where my kids will be going to. I just kind of mirrored it off of the page that they had there. So it wasn't like an original idea, but I thought it'd be absolutely great for the Blue Raider family to come together with something like that. And it was great timing, to bring something like that up because, just to go to that page, that no one's going to go on there talking about politics, it's just reminiscing, taking our head out of it, and and a lot of feel good stories to it. So it's been pretty good so far.
And I know from talking with other people, they love the page. I know when I personally saw it, I was like, oh, it's a great idea. So the town, Middletown alumni living all over the place are very happy to see that and kind of reconnect with some old folks and share some memories and all that. So I guess
Definitely.
Kind of on behalf of them, thank you for doing it. Okay, so the other thing you mentioned was a couple different coaches, and you mentioned your ninth grade team. I know you guys made some history that year. Do you mind just sharing what the historical significance of your freshman team's record was?
Yeah, you know what? I'm not sure like where it compared to any other teams. And I know that I think there was one other team that did it in our history. If you probably know more than I do, but we went undefeated that year, man. And it wasn't just being undefeated. We had one team out of I think we were 8-0, so we only played 8 games. But there was one team the whole season that even scored on us, and that was a little shank play that shouldn't have happened type of thing. But besides that, man, it was an awesome year, all around. We just completely dominated each team. I mean, we embarrassed running backs. We tackled everybody in the backfield, like 3 out of 4 downs. Like they were caught in the backfield. It was like borderline unfair. So it was a great year, and it was a little easier to transition into into varsity play when you're coming with such a big head from, we got smacked down fast, in varsity, but it was nice transition from that. So it was cool, man. It was fun.
You had 2 head coaches for your varsity years, Dennis Etsy and Mike Dungai. All right. Do you have any memories that you can share about either or both of those coaches?
Dungai's stint was really short with me because he came in. I think it was like, if I'm not mistaken, it was like the spring semester as. I'm not sure if he came in as a spring semester as a teacher, and I didn't have him as a teacher then either. So we only had a meeting, a couple meetings in the off season, and then it was right into the season with him. So I mean, he was a good coach. I can't say anything bad about him, but I think my history with him isn't. I really don't have too many stories except for senior year, just fighting, going to battles together. But Etsy was the guy that you moved to Middletown in 5th grade, and he was the star. He was he was the big boss. He was like the crime boss, or not crime boss, but like the, you know, the guy, you know, he was the guy.
He
So,
was the
you know,
Don.
the Don, there you go. That's what I was looking for. But, you know, coming up, you know, he has, you know, mega respect. And, you know, you kind of, even as a kid, as soon as you get into the system, you know, you're taught to, obviously respect everybody, but he was the one that you almost got nervous around, you know? So he was the one that, coming up was the guy that, I really, developed a relationship with. And, you know, his like pregame speeches. I think if I would say any story, really, was the pregame speeches before we left the high school in the weight rooms. Like every game, man, it was priceless. It was epic. He would get some of us to tears, man. He would be in tears, and we would want to go to war for him, you know. So, you know, after that pregame speech, he would stand in that doorway. We would, all give him a good big hug on the way out to the bus, and then, and then go to the game. But man, those speeches were epic. Anybody that ever played for him should know that was the thing right there. The other thing with Coach Etsy, man, I can't go without not saying is, it went really far with me. I had a scholarship to go to Clarion after my senior year, and in the spring I blew my knee out playing pickup basketball, and I mean completely blew it out. Like, you know, MCL, ACL, all the CLs they were gone. They completely blew up, man. And he visited me in the hospital, man. I didn't even know he knew that I tore my ACL and all that. And he, you know, I woke up, I came to, and I was barely there, and he was standing right above me. You know, it goes a long way when people go, you know, over and beyond to make sure you're okay in times like that. So, man, he, you know, we still have a relationship these days, not just because of that, but, you know, he's a great man.
Are there any other coaches that, you know, made impressions on you, or, you know, you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I mean, not just one. I mean, there's, you know, pretty much every coach, you know, it was obvious from day one that they were there as a team themselves, not against us, working with us, of course, but, you know, they worked as a unit themselves. You know, they were all good friends. They, you know, you never hear anyone argue or anything like that, you know, with each other. And they were clearly not there for the paycheck. You know, like you know, to single out, you know, any one coach, besides the head coach, of course, which, you know, takes all the credit or takes all the downfall, depending. They were all there. They were all solid guys, man. I have a relationship with a few of them still these days, and can't say anything bad about any of them. But I mean, I thank every single one of them, definitely.
I think I hear what you're saying about, you know, not singling anybody out. But, you know, just to point out, we have different eras across this whole group thing.
Mm-hmm.
I do think we should kind of shout out some names just so people know who we are talking about. So I know we have Coach Schatz, Coach Dickey, Coach Politis, Coach Bear. Am I forgetting anybody? I'm sure I am.
Yeah, there's a few here and there, but also Coach Fox.
Yeah.
You know, he was a trainer, but he was a great coach in junior high, and he was always there for advice the whole way up through. So I had a good relationship with him then and now as well.
Bisking, Coach Bisking.
Yeah, Coach Bisking. Oh, you know what? I cannot go without telling this Bisking story. There was one time in the weight room, right? And Coach Bisking, Schatz, and Etsy were all like monsters in the gym. For anyone that doesn't know, but anyone that would be listening to this already knew that were, you know, that were coached by them. But they were all monsters in the gym. And there was one time that Bisking was squatting, and he asked me for a spot, and he had his wraps on, his ace bandages, like 30 ace bandages on his legs and everything like that. But he's on the way back up, and he stopped, you know, like kind of halfway. And I'm like, you know, I should have waited for him to kind of go down a little bit. But when he stopped, I was like, all right, I got to keep moving. So I reached in and I pushed up on his chest just a little bit. He got so mad. He was like, get your hand off me. And that's what generated the energy to get it back up. So I think I helped him more than anything get that up. but he'll tell you the same story from his own perspective.
All right, you kind of touched on this about, the qualities that coaches taught you. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
No, man, just, I mean, if anything, is like, life lessons. There's a lot of life lessons that came from, what they don't directly imply, but what you gather from it in the long run, you don't realize until you're out of there. Going to war every week with everybody, and basically, getting up, manning up, and never giving up. That's what they teach you. And, they may not say those exact words, but I mean, that's what you take from it. And man, it goes a long way in life. It really does, especially times you get down and things aren't going your way, and it's just that history just proves that you can do it. And it's man, it's a great experience, man. I almost want to like force my kids to play football. How as a parent you're like, I don't want to force them to do anything they don't want, but man, it's such a great lesson in life. And
What would your typical game day be like? Did you have specific routines? Were you superstitious thing? And if you could kind of walk us through, like, from morning, school, after school, game, before the game, what were the things that you did before a game?
yeah, man. Well, school itself is just, I mean, that day, I'll say that day every week is the longest day, and also the longest blur, because there wasn't much being learned on Fridays. My head was totally thinking about the game, and I wish I could have been a better student on those days, because I sure needed the help. But school-wise, man, that's what it was, man. It was, I mean, the only thing within school that would be different, man, is lunch. Like I wouldn't eat 3 chicken patties with we did the ketchup and mayo mix, and eating so bad that day. I wouldn't go all out and go crazy with my diet on game day. I would, I don't want to have to visit the bathroom at halftime, which I've seen people do, but not me. So that would be school. But besides that, man, I always made sure I was, the first one to report, after school, get my taping done on my ankles, get dressed. I'd be one of the first ones dressed, ready to go. I'll be reading my, I was a little slower learner than most people, so I needed to read my playbook for that week and kind of, try to visualize, offensively, different scenarios. I mean, I only really had 2 plays in a wing tee offense, so it was a sweep and a quick pitch. So, but it's not visualizing the play itself, but visualizing, like, what could happen throughout the play that would make you, cut upfield or cut outfield, things like that. Just kind of visualizing before the game. It kind of makes it easier, in my head at least. It made it easier for when the time came. So I did a lot of that, and then you get on the bus, go to the field, go through the whole thing. And then one thing I can say differently than probably 99% of everybody is, well, I always had anxiety as a kid. It was never really diagnosed till later, but every game, during the pregame speech, and this is throughout my whole career, the pregame speech, I'm always in the bathroom puking while everyone else is getting all amped up to go outside. So I'm like, popping out, wiping my face. Are we ready yet? Like just hitting the field at the same time. So it was college too, man. I was puking in the back during the pregame speech. Never made one. No.
Wait, does that mean you never gave one as a senior?
Nah, I was never good at stuff like that, man. I was more of a on the field, like, amp guy, but I couldn't, getting me to talk for more than 10 seconds on, anything without stuttering or forgetting a word, man, was always a little tough for me. So, no, I was never that guy.
All right, so we played in the same era. I know the answer to this question. Your home field was War Memorial Field. Could you kind of describe how, your experiences there, your feelings about War Memorial Field?
Starting from the actual visual setup to it, man, growing up, in the town as a young kid, man, it seated so many people, with the end zone stands, and we hosted playoff games for like other teams. And, during the big games, man, the ambiance of the field and the atmosphere, even before playing on that field, man, was second to none. So when you actually, it was, I mean, from the grass, the way the stadium was kept, man, remember in homecoming, they always like did the end zones real nice. And this year's playoff game was phenomenal, by the way, too. Like or the second round, I think it was first or both rounds, of seeing how well the field was. I mean, but that was always really cool playing on that because they always kept it really well, especially in comparison to others. I mean, McDevitt. All I got to say is McDevitt. Um, but just it was amazing playing on that field. From the crowd and the just everything involved with it, man. I think I wrote something somewhere. It was like, from the time that you smell that fresh cut grass until that last whistle's blown, man, is just an experience that everybody needs to have.
What were some of your rivals or the teams that you really like to beat or play against?
Yeah, being in the '90s, playing in the '90s, it was like, the same growing up as the same that we had. I played my senior year was the season of '96, so I think the year after that is when they started. Excuse me, they started like stepping down, not stepping down, but they reclassified everything, and they started playing like teams from all over the place. But I mean, from our time there, it was LD, it was Steelton, it was McDevitt. Those were the three teams really that were, the ones that, were must wins. I mean, you want to win every game, but those meant a little more every single year than the other ones did. Unfortunately, my class never got a chance to beat McDevitt. We came close our junior year, your senior year. That's the year they won states and everything like that. They were a really tough team with Rakai Nelson and Jordan Scott and all them. Really tough team, but we had them down to it. And same thing our senior year, man. Halftime we were up and just didn't end up that way. But we were always in with them. But Mr. McDevitt would have been the one that I would love to get one win out of. Steel High, between them and LD, I think those were our closest rivals, though. I'm talking about going all out war on the field. It was great because those two teams at the end of the game, we would shake and hug each other and stuff like that. But and we would see each other in the off season. For the exception of two knuckleheads in my class, which I won't name names, they stirring up the pot in LD in the off season kind of made it a little tougher for during the season. But besides that, man, we were all enemies at the beginning and friends at the end, so it was great. But but those three teams definitely were our go-tos. You probably agree with that, right?
I would, yeah. I mean, just historically, Steel High. Although at least the game that I played, it wasn't really competitive, but historically that rivalry was definitely there. LD, of course, we played them my junior year for homecoming. Obviously at home,
Mm-hmm. That was
special
a big win.
You throw all that stuff on top of it, makes it even more special. Also, the game Randy Hefner concussed Broadwater.
Yeah, same game. Yeah,
Right.
that helped us win for sure.
Yeah, and then McDevitt. Yeah, that was a big one. We started out the years with them. Even my sophomore year, that was that was huge going into it. We ended up getting crushed, but that I remember my junior year opening up the season. I'm pretty sure there was at least 8,000 people there. Like that place was
Against McDevitt.
at home too. So like, that place was packed. You could just feel it in the air. I think we were preseason ranked in the state, and I know for sure McDevitt was.
Yeah, that was that game itself was my first varsity game, and or my class's first varsity game being out there, man. And I remember the summer before that. That's when the movie The Program came out. The guy Darnell, when he first like they came out of the tunnel and he was like, oh shit. He was like, oh my goodness, and just so overwhelmed when he came out of the tunnel. Like I remember seeing that, but as soon as I came out of the tunnel, or out of the locker room and go running on the field, I was like, looking all around, man. It was crazy. It was really cool. it's a blue collar town, man. They tell you how it is, and you'll hear their opinions, if it's good or bad. um you know uh their support is for the players, win or loss, man, but they travel well. um and it's that part is obvious, man. You go to other, especially in the playoff games, I mean, you go to Hershey for the States, and the other teams, like, it's like, there's like 100 people there, and it's like a couple thousand or something like that for us. I'm not sure how many, but I'm so bad with numbers. But it's obvious that they travel well, and they really stand behind them. It's great, man. We've never had an away game that our fans were just like not there. It was always really cool that most away games that we had, we were pretty much like, I mean, almost the same amount as the home team on the other side.
Can you name any old Blue Raider football players that you looked up to growing up?
Yeah, man. Definitely. There's so many, and you almost want to like not name any in case you miss one, because there's just there's so many to to name. But I mean, the first one I can always think of is like Roger Smith. Roger Smith was my neighbor when I lived in Pineford when we first moved. So it was so hard not to be a fan of the quarterback of the varsity team when you live right next to him. So yeah, Roger Smith, man. Strohecker, Bob Shipp, Coach Myers, Chad Durr, man, he was amazing. Doug Hunter was all over the field, man. Mike Carnes and Charles Wallace, man, that duo of the air threats were awesome, man. Antoine Scott, hardest hitter pound for pound ever. I think I would say karate, man, he's just the beast. TR was like a big brother to me, man. TR Leach, great player too. Gary Coleman and Josh Schiavone, they were both like basically my offense and defensive big brothers. Going into varsity, you always gotta like have somebody, not necessarily help you out, but I mean, they just kind of took to me, and it was great, man. And can't thank those two enough. But those other guys, man, and I know I'm missing so many, but that was basically the time that I moved to Middletown, was right in that '88 season when they're win the district championship. So it was a great year to buy in, but it was awesome, and they were my first as a younger guy, it was great to watch those guys growing up. So they're the guys ahead of me. I'm not naming any guys really that I played with except for Schiavone and Coleman. And that's only because they were kind of big brothers to me. But there's so many good players before and a lot after too. So
let's talk about, do you have a favorite Middletown football player of all time?
I do. And once again, it's if you have to answer one, there would be one that stood out for me, and that's because Scott Eberly. It's just in that time when I moved in there, they were an awesome team at the time, and he really exemplified toughness to me for like an undersized player, especially speed, strength, the combination that he had as a running back was unbelievable, man. And he really gave me the vision to say, man, you know what, I could be like that someday, and I really did my best to not emulate his style, because everybody has their own style as like a running back and stuff, but man, Scott Everly was great, man. He was a tough ass player. So yeah, I would say it'd be him.
Okay. And do you have any favorite teammates that you played with?
That's more of a plead the fifth kind of answer, because I really loved all my teammates. Everybody I played with, I have so much respect for. And we went through everything together, from, the guys that, got all the credit, and, the conference, all conference, all district, all state guys. I mean, from them to the guys that, held the pads for everybody, man. It was everybody gave everything for everybody. It was a straight team, and I cannot name one player. I mean, I had really good friends on those teams. They knew who they were, but at the same time, when it all came down to it, man, we were all a team. So I hate to be that guy, but I mean, it's really that type of answer, and that's really how I feel.
I want to come back to what you mentioned. You moved to Middletown in 1988, you said. Where did you move into Middletown from?
Harrisburg. I was a Yeah, we were in the middle of the city. I actually lived around the corner from Ricky Waters, um, and his family, and I grew up with his younger brother, so to speak. You know, playing sports, we always found ourselves on the same teams because we were around the same age group. So, you know, at one point, the year before I moved to Middletown, I was actually an offensive guard for the Ponies for St. Margaret Mary. But with credits due, or you know, my running backs were uh, Hank Poteet, which played for the Steelers and went to Penn State, and Ricky Waters' little brother. So I mean, it's kind of hard to, you know, the bloodline is running thick there. So it was hard to get a specialty position on a team like that because they were so deep. But you know, when I came to Middletown, all of a sudden I was like one of the fastest kids. It was great. But how it worked out was my aunt, my mom's sister, she was living in Middletown, and we spent a lot of time on the weekends coming and hanging out. And George Perry, who's actually my cousin, he's my he's my cousin, and he was part of that family as well that my aunt was married into, or so to speak. Um, so we spent a lot of time with them, and we went to a couple Middletown games and watched, you know, George, you know, play. So we saw you guys play in the Pee Wees. We just didn't, you know, we reacted. We moved actually. We made sure it was before football season when we moved, because I told my mom I wanted to move to Middletown, and she actually listened to me. So we moved because I wanted to move, which is so weird. But we moved to Middletown, and we got into Pineford, you know, right before football season started, and I got on. I believe, I don't think it was Pee Wees. I think it was Ponies when I first got there, right? I
It was
could be.
Ponies because you were on
Yeah.
my team, and I lived a couple buildings over from where you grew up in Pineford. And I do remember, you know, first day of practice running sprints, and you were always first. Coach is like, "Who's this guy?"
Yeah.
And you made that
Fat kid
first
with a big
impression.
head getting trucked. Yeah.
Right. What's your biggest win or biggest game that you remember?
I would say it'd be two. Um, Briefly, the one you touched on earlier, that homecoming game in '94 against LD. I mean, that one was down to the wire, and it was a lot of big plays, and you know, it was just an exciting game. I don't know so much, you know, what it was like being in the stands that game, but I mean, on the field, man, that was one of the most competitive games I think I've ever been in. And you know, coming out with a win against a rival on homecoming, so that was a great win in itself. But LD, our senior year, was a great win as well. They just gave us a run for our money every single year. The year in between, we went two OTs at Hershey, and we lost them your senior year, my junior year. But senior year, man, we went there again in Hershey, and in the pouring rain. I mean, raining sideways, and we gave it to them 14-6, I believe, or 14-7. But it was a battle back and forth. But it wasn't that many big plays. It was a lot of turnovers. It was messy, but it was all out war, and we came out on top, and you know, against a rival, and that always felt great. But yeah, that was probably my biggest win in high school.
What jersey number did you wear and why?
Yeah, number five. Five was always my number, man, and the timing was so great that you know, Antoine Scott wore it, and he was out of there when it came time for me to claim a number, and you know, what was weird is I was gonna go against the grain and try to get number two, but then you had number two, so I stuck with five, and I'm glad I did. I'm glad it turned out that way, but it had a lot of significance to it because, you know, the history of that number. I mean, you know, I mean, as far as I remember, it was Mike Divitor. I mean, you know, I learned a lot about him since, so it wasn't really the reason, but I learned a lot about him since with that number. But the guys I do remember is you know, Mike Carnes, Antoine Scott before me. Great number fives, man. They exemplify Middletown football in every aspect, and especially Mike Carnes on both sides of the ball was awesome, but Antoine Scott, man, he was so impressive to watch because he was, like I said, pound for pound the biggest hitter in Middletown history, and just in my opinion. And he played cornerback, and he wasn't the biggest guy, and he got it done. So me and my brother, we're both born on the 5th. He's born January 5th. I'm June 5th. We're 5 years apart. We're both 5 months apart. So this, with me and my brother itself, man, we always had that 5. 5 was always our number, and we always knew that growing up. So if someone would say pick a number behind my hand, that would be the one automatically we would pick. So there was a lot to it growing up, and then it helped the significance of the players ahead of me. So that's why I chose 5 then. But you probably won't ask this question, but I was always a cocky player, and I played, but I call it a swagger when swagger was just being a word. I called it swagger on the field, and I felt like I had a lot of it. So when I went to college, I wore number 1. I don't know not that many people that saw me play, but I wore number 1. I was this little fat round dude, like just wearing number 1. But it was cool because it's usually like someone skinnier and zigzaggier than I was to wear it. But it was cool. It's about as cool as seeing a kicker wear it.
Well, that's funny, and I apologize for taking number 2 from you, but it sounds like it worked out better.
It did, man.
And I'll say this as well: if there was a number 1, I would have snatched that up before.
Yeah,
because I was cocky too.
Yeah.
All right, so we talked. You mentioned this a couple of times. Can you just tell everybody what you did after Middletown High School, where you continued to play?
Yeah, my road was a little rocky, man, but I was persistent, and my grades in high school weren't the best, but it was enough to get me there. I was they done away with it a couple of years after, but it was Prop 48, meaning that your GPA was good enough, but your SAT was a little lower than they asked for. Than the NCAA requires. So I was a Prop 48 going at a full scholarship going to Clarion, and I in the spring leading up to going there, I blew out my knee playing basketball. Excuse me. So I had to take a year off, and they still honored the scholarship, so they still liked me. So I went back and as a Prop 48, I didn't get to step on the field. I was doing, I did some study halls with the teams and some team meetings and stuff like that, but it was really depressing for me to not be able to step on the field. So I really honestly didn't take it serious at all, academically, anything like that. And I was out of there after 2 semesters. Came home, worked for a year, and then realized that I need to go back to school. So I went to Stevens Tech. It's a junior college. So I mean, a walk-on isn't really it's basically, you can walk on easily at a junior college. It's a matter if you make the team or not. And then, I excelled pretty good there. I was, not to boast myself or anything, but, all conference and a couple different things. Going to Stevens Tech, man, it's a trade school, and I have a trade under my belt, and I have so many opportunities for employment now. Because of that, it's kind of the best thing that ever happened to me was going there. So, but yeah, that's about it.
Do you mind sharing anything else really that you want to share about Middletown football? Could be funny, serious, life-changing, painful, anything like that.
Yeah, to be honest, man, I don't really have anything prepared to say with stuff like that, but I'll just say, man, it was, growing up, I really didn't have the guidance at home that a lot of people had. And, it was a good thing that I, excelled in that sport, but, it really, really was the one thing that kept me, off the streets and running with the wrong crowd, because I did have friends that were the wrong crowd, like the whole time in high school. And it's just, I didn't get to hang out with them because I was playing sports, and it was the best thing for me ever. But football in general, man, it really opened up a path for me to be able to you know, in life to be able to, you know, go different directions instead of getting out of high school and be like, oh, what do I do now? But you know, yeah, it just it wasn't. I don't know. It was a great time, man. Sharing the field with everybody, going to war week in and week out, man, was just, you know, it was an absolute pleasure, man. From the time that you smell the fresh cut grass to the last game of your senior year when you're, you know, hugging your players, you know, holding back tears, or, you know, holding back tears, and, you know, just you know, because, you know, most everybody's career is done at that point, but you put everything you had and you laid it all on the field, and no regrets. It's just it was one of the best times of my life for sure, and I'm real thankful for it. So that's part of the reason, you know, it's just it runs deep, and you know, the blue and gold in my blood, you know, never goes away. So that's, you know, more or less the reason, you know, we're starting the Facebook page and or the Facebook group, and just so glad that there's so many other people that feel the same way. I've always felt like I nerded out on it a lot, you know, of you know, Middletown football, this and that, and me living in Philly for 11 years. Living in Philly for 11 years, and then 9 years here in Downingtown, man, you kind of lose touch. But you know, ever since, you know, Coach Myers took over and started, you know, revamping the program. I mean, it had its up and downs before that, but revamping the program, man, it's woken me up, and I'm a huge fan again, and want to do whatever I can to, you know, support the program.